As a member of the Senate Finance Committee, the Republican tax plan doesn't solve the problems that working families face in this economy. Ask any middle-class family in New Jersey what the big problems facing them are. And they'll tell you that their cost of living is skyrocketing and that their paychecks still aren't growing. They'll tell you that their property taxes keep going up and their mortgage is still too expensive. They'll tell you that their health insurance deductibles are too high and they have no idea of how they're going to pay to send their kids to college. They'll tell you that America used to build things. It used to do big things, but that now our infrastructure is falling apart and the country falling behind in terms of the rest of the world. And here's what you won't hear from everyday New Jerseyans and Americans. You won't hear that working families in New Jersey should pay more in property taxes to pay for massive corporate tax cuts, or that their mortgage is too affordable. You won't hear the priorities in the tax plan put forward by President Trump and Republicans in Congress. Those are not New Jersey priorities. It's a plan that adds $1.5 trillion to our national debt to pay for massive giveaways to giant corporations and the heirs of billionaire fortunes. And these giveaways are paid by you. The Trump tax plan undercuts deductions that New Jersey's middle-class families rely on, like the state and local income tax deduction. As a matter of fact, 1.8 million New Jerseyans deduct cumulatively $17 billion in state income and sales tax from their federal income tax, with the average deduction for the average New Jerseyan being about $9,444. That's gone under the president's plan. And it undercuts that type of deduction that New Jersey families rely on. The mortgage interest deduction is dramatically reduced. The chronic care deduction, what do I mean by that? Under this new tax plan, after a certain amount, if you have out-of-pocket expenses in your health care, those deductions that exist under the law are largely eliminated. And the student loan interest deduction is also eliminated. Now, I know that part of my own education was grants from the federal government through Pell and Perkins, and part of it was loans. And if I couldn't deduct the interest deduction as I was finally getting into a professional part of my life, it just makes it more challenging. We should be finding ways to help young people, our sons and daughters, be able to get the type of college education they need to compete in this global economy, not make it harder. The Trump tax plan, the Republican tax plan, makes it a lot harder. We all know in New Jersey that the cost to own a home is already too high. It's already difficult to pay for college, and if there's one thing for sure, property taxes need to go down. Despite the best effort of mayors and councils, there are pressures that come upon them that create a challenge in terms of the services they provide. They need to go down, not up. But instead of addressing the real needs of middle-class families, Republicans are focused on the 1%. Instead of helping families get ahead, President Trump and congressional Republicans have essentially proposed a property tax increase imposed by the federal government. If you think your property taxes are already too high, just wait until you're taxed twice on the same money. And it's not like we don't already pay our fair share and some more. New Jersey, because it is a high wealth state, is a donor state. So we already pay too much in taxes. We already don't get a fair share despite our best efforts because we are a high wealth state as a donor state from the federal government. So we're not takers, we're makers. New Jersey's economy subsidizes a good part of the federal government, and the Trump tax plan leaves us with an even greater burden. New Jerseyans can't afford to subsidize the rest of the country any more than we already do. Not only is this a bad bill for New Jersey, it's a bad bill for the country. Instead of making critical investments to our infrastructure, our schools, making sure that in a post-September 11th world, we have the resources for our police, firefighters, and emergency management, something that Senator Booker and I are always fighting to make sure the COPS grant and the SAFER grant actually gets fully funded so that we can help communities like Bloomfield have the critical services they need for their citizens. We're going to be borrowing $1.5 trillion from China. That is basically our banker. They're the ones who keep buying our debt, and give CEOs and corporations the essence of that money. Think about the investments we could make with $1.5 trillion. We could double Pell Grants for students from modest families. We could pay for child care assistance for 6 million children. We could treat 300,000 people with opioid addiction. And we could repair all of the backlog maintenance in our national parks. And still have enough money left over to retrain 3.5 million low-skilled workers in high-skilled jobs. But we don't get to do any of these big things. Instead, we give big corporations a massive giveaway and eliminate taxes altogether on the heirs to billionaire fortunes. At a time when income inequality is stubbornly high, eliminating the estate tax and letting the most privileged families in America avoid paying their fair share is just plain wrong. It's wrong to take away the student loan interest deduction from millions of young Americans with mountains of college debt. It's wrong to raise the burden of property taxes or make it harder to own a home, just so that the president's kids can get a tax cut. And let me finally turn to the corporate tax cut from 35 to 20%. Every single time Republicans cut taxes for big corporations, they promise that everyday working families will feel the benefits. But they never do. This is a debt-exploding $1.5 trillion tax cut for multinational corporations with no strings attached. That's right. There's no guarantee that any of the corporate windfall goes to raise workers' wages or create more jobs at home. No connection, no incentive, no obligation. So does this plan help us build an economy that values work and not just wealth? No. It's nothing more than a huge giveaway to Wall Street investors financed on the backs of middle-income families. So someone please tell me, how is a corporate tax cut that funnels billions to Wall Street investors going to fund the Gateway Project? How is eliminating taxes on the inheritance of massive fortunes going to rebuild our crumbling roads, ports, and railways? A corporate tax cut won't pay for preschool for children. A corporate tax cut won't fund paid leave for a new mom who's still recovering from childbirth. A corporate tax cut won't improve rail service, solve climate change, build more resilient coastlines so that we can meet the challenge of the next Sandy, or help families along the Jersey Shore raise their homes. A corporate tax cut won't solve the opioid crisis. A corporate tax cut will not help more families afford the dream of higher education. Here's what an unprecedented corporate tax cut of 35 to 20% will do. It will shortchange our children by exploding the federal debt by nearly $2 trillion. It cedes our economic future to China by clearing the way for Republicans to slash the investments we need to compete in the 21st century. It seems that Republicans are only budget hawks when it comes to funding Medicaid for seniors in nursing homes or keeping a kid from a poor family like me to pay for college. When they have the chance to cut taxes for big corporations, they don't think twice about what it's going to cost. This isn't tax reform. It isn't what middle-class families in New Jersey and across the country need. It isn't about creating a greater economic future for all of our citizens. It's a budget-busting abomination, and we have to fight it with everything we've got.